It started over dessert. My mother was cutting into the tiramisu when she said, casually, "We'll come by around 10 tomorrow. Movers get there at 9. I thought she meant visiting. My sister didn't look up from her wine. "I call the bigger guest room," she added. "The one with the balcony." I waited for someone to smile. No one did. My father leaned back in his chair, nodding once like the matter had already been reviewed and approved. 3 bedrooms for one person is wasted space, Lily. We've talked about this. We hadn't. I kept my hands folded in my lap. Talked about what? About us moving in, my mother said gently, as if reminding a forgetful child. It just makes sense. We'll help you. You're always working. Help me. They were dividing my home while passing the bread. My sister had her phone out now. I already measured the smaller room from the photos you posted. My desk will fit. The photos were from a diplomatic event. She'd zoomed in. You can clear out the 3rd bedroom tonight, my father added. We don't need much. They weren't asking. They weren't negotiating. They were reallocating. I let the silence sit there. No one mistook it for disagreement. They mistook it for compliance. My mother reached across the table and squeezed my wrist. This is family, Lily. We don't stand on ceremony with each other. Ceremony. I almost smiled at the word. You don't need all that space, she continued softly. And we're not paying rent somewhere else when our daughter has an empty apartment. It wasn't empty. It was secured. But they weren't thinking about that. They were thinking about square footage and entitlement. I placed my napkin beside my plate. I live in federal housing, I said evenly. My father waved his hand. Technicality. It's not a technicality. My sister sighed. Here we go. It's assigned housing, I clarified. It isn't like a normal lease. My mother's voice stayed patient. Sweetheart, don't be dramatic. It's just an apartment. Just. My father leaned forward. You've always done this. Hide behind big words. It's 3 bedrooms. We need space. You have space. This is solved. Solved. They had already decided the timeline. Already scheduled the truck. Already rearranged my rooms. My sister looked at me with something close to pity. You don't even use that 2nd bathroom. I watched them carefully then. Not angry. Not embarrassed. Certain. Certain that my work was abstract. Certain that my job was flexible. Certain that my home was negotiable. Certain that I would fold. My mother picked up her phone. I'll confirm with the movers. You shouldn't do that, I said quietly. My father's jaw tightened. Why? Because they won't be allowed through the perimeter. There was a pause. My sister laughed first. Perimeter? Lily, it's not the Pentagon. I didn't laugh. It's protected housing, I said. My father's tone cooled. Are you threatening us with, what? A doorman? I'm explaining, I replied. My mother set her fork down slowly. You're choosing strangers over family. There it was. The pivot. Not about logistics. About loyalty. I didn't argue. I didn't defend. I just said, if you send a truck, it won't be admitted. My sister rolled her eyes. Watch us. My father stood. 10 o'clock tomorrow. He kissed my mother's forehead. My sister grabbed her purse. My mother gave me one last look. Disappointed. Rehearsed. Almost wounded. You'll understand when you're older, she said. I am 34. I paid the check. They let me. As we walked out of the restaurant, my father added casually, Don't make this difficult, Lily. I didn't answer. Because difficulty wasn't the issue. Authorization was. And they had absolutely no idea what that word meant where I lived. The movers were already booked. At 8:12 a.m., my mother texted. Movers confirmed. See you soon. Clear the hallway. I was already dressed for work. Navy suit. Low heels. Clearance badge clipped inside my coat. I didn't respond. At 8:47, my sister sent a photo of paint swatches. Thinking of doing my room in something warmer. My room. They had downgraded me to a co-occupant in my own home overnight. At 9:03, my father called. I let it go to voicemail. He left one anyway. Don't embarrass yourself today, Lily. This doesn't have to become a thing. A thing. I poured my coffee slowly and stood by the living room window. Beyond the glass, landscape grounds, controlled gate access, Discreet perimeter fencing, camera nodes placed where most people wouldn't notice. Nothing theatrical. Just layered. Deliberate. I checked my building portal. Visitor access. None requested. Delivery authorization. None scheduled. Temporary clearance override. Not submitted. I could have filed a preemptive notice. I didn't. At 9:26, my sister called. This time I answered. You're being ridiculous, she said without greeting. The movers are already loading. You should cancel them. They charge a same-day fee. That's still cheaper than what happens if they arrive. She exhaled sharply. You always do this. You escalate everything. It's just us. Just us. That phrase again. I told you, I said evenly, it's protected housing. Protected from what? Parents. Unauthorized occupants. You're acting like we're criminals. I didn't answer that. She filled the silence. You don't even own it. No, I agreed. I don't. That was the part they misunderstood. Ownership wasn't the leverage. Authorization was. At 9:58, my mother sent a final text. Truck is pulling in. I stepped onto my balcony. From that angle, you can see the outer vehicle checkpoint. Unmarked, but unmistakable if you know what you're looking at. The moving truck stopped. Not abruptly. Not aggressively. Just stopped. 2 security officers approached. Professional posture. Calm movements. No raised voices. No flashing lights. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see my father step down from the passenger side. He gestured toward the building. He pointed upward, toward my floor. One of the officers nodded once and spoke into his radio. My phone rang immediately. My mother. I answered. What did you do? She demanded. I didn't do anything. They're saying we don't have authorization. That's correct. My father's voice came faintly through the speaker. Put her on. She didn't need to. He took the phone. You enjoying this? He asked. No. Then tell them we're family. I'm not the one denying entry. There was a pause. Then, so fix it. I can't. Why not? Because access isn't emotional. Because housing tied to federal clearance isn't flexible. Because if I override protocol for family, it becomes a reportable event. Because my badge doesn't bend for dinner table decisions. But I didn't say any of that. I just said, it doesn't work like that. His voice hardened. You're choosing a building over your parents. I'm following policy. Policy doesn't matter in real life. It does where I live. In the background, I heard one of the officers speak again. Calm. Measured. My father muttered something I couldn't make out. Then the line shifted. A different voice. Professional. This is residential security. Are you expecting an unscheduled moving vehicle? No, I replied. Understood. We'll handle it. No drama. No alarm. Just documentation. My mother got back on the phone. They're taking down our names. Yes. For what? For the incident report. Silence. Then, sharper. You reported us. I didn't have to. You could stop this. No. Another silence. Longer this time. My sister's voice in the background. They are asking for ID. My father again. Closer now. Lily, think carefully. This affects how people see you. It already had. Just not in the way he meant. I did think carefully, I said. The call disconnected. From my balcony, I watched the truck revive slowly. Not forced. Not chased. Escorted. My parents stood at the gate longer than necessary. Confused. Offended. Certain this was a misunderstanding that would be corrected by someone more reasonable. It wasn't. At 10:41, I received a secure email notification. Subject line. Unscheduled access attempt. Logged. I didn't open it yet. At 11:02, my mother texted. We'll discuss this tonight. Calm down and fix it. I went inside, locked the balcony door, picked up my bag, and left for work. They still believed this was about stubbornness. They still believed I could override it. They still believed I would apologize. They hadn't realized something else had just happened. Their names were now attached to an official perimeter breach attempt. And I had not intervened. I opened the incident report at 1:17 p.m. Not immediately. Not impulsively. After my morning brief. After I reviewed 2 cables and cleared a compliance memo, then I opened it. The language was clinical. Vehicle denied entry due to lack of resident authorization. 3 individuals identified as immediate family of assigned occupant. Event logged. No escalation required. No escalation required. That was the phrase that mattered. Because escalation is what happens when patterns form. And patterns are what security tracks. I read it twice. Then I closed it. At 2:03 p.m., my father emailed me. Not texted. Emailed. Subject: unacceptable. You have embarrassed this family. Security treated us like intruders. Your mother was humiliated. Fix this immediately. No greeting. No acknowledgement of policy. Just hierarchy trying to reassert itself. At 2:11 p.m., my sister posted an Instagram story. A photo of the moving truck parked on the street outside the perimeter. Caption: when your own sister thinks she's above her family. She tagged me. She deleted it 20 minutes later. Long enough for it to circulate. I didn't respond. I forwarded the incident report to my personal archive folder. Not out of fear. Out of clarity. Because this wasn't about housing. It was about access. And access, in my life, is documented. That afternoon, my mother called 5 times. I let it ring. Then she left a voicemail. We sacrificed everything for you. And now you won't even share space. You think you're untouchable because of some job. Some job. I stood by my office window and watched the traffic below. There it was again. The miscalculation. They thought my authority was cosmetic. Title-based. Temporary. They thought it dissolved under emotional pressure. But my clearance wasn't symbolic. It came with obligations. With reporting thresholds. With housing tied to active status. If I allowed unauthorized residents, even family, it would trigger a compliance review, which would trigger questions, which would trigger scrutiny, not because I did something dramatic, but because I failed to do something procedural. They believed I could just tell security. They didn't understand that security doesn't answer to me. It answers to structure, and structure does not bend for feelings. At 4:38 p.m., I received a second notification. Advisory: repeat unauthorized access attempts may initiate formal review. Repeat. That word settled in. Because my father does not retreat when denied. He reframes. He pushes from a different angle. I knew what was coming before it arrived. At 6:12 p.m., my aunt called. I heard you locked your parents out. I didn't correct her. At 6:30, my cousin texted. It's just temporary, Lily. Why are you making it a federal case? Because it already was. But they didn't know that. They thought this was interpersonal. It wasn't. It had crossed into institutional territory the moment the truck reached the gate. At 7:05 p.m., my father sent one final message. If you don't resolve this tonight, we'll come back tomorrow and speak to whoever's in charge. There it was. Overreach. He thought authority could be located physically. Walked into. Reasoned with. Pressured. He didn't realize that whoever's in charge had already logged his name. I stayed at the message for a long moment. And something shifted. Not anger. Not panic. Detachment. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a belief system. They believed proximity granted entitlement. They believed parenthood granted override. They believed my success was communal property. And they believed I would eventually fall to preserve peace. I wouldn't. Not because I wanted conflict, but because I understood consequence. At 8:02 p.m., I replied. Just once. If you return without authorization, it will escalate automatically. I can't stop that. No emotion. No accusation. Just fact. My phone stayed silent for 9 minutes. Then my sister responded. You would let them arrest Dad. No one is being arrested. I typed. Unless someone refuses to leave. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Reappeared. Then. You've changed. I set my phone down. No. I hadn't changed. I had just stopped translating my boundaries into something they found comfortable. At 9:14 p.m., a final email arrived. From Residential Security. Please confirm whether any future access requests from listed individuals should be pre-cleared or denied. This was the lever. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Administrative. If I marked deny, future attempts would trigger faster containment. If I marked pre-clear, it would require my written authorization each time. Choice. Documented. Trackable. Permanent until amended. I didn't click anything yet. Because tomorrow, they would test it again. And when they did, it wouldn't be about bedrooms anymore. It would be about authority. They came back at 9:32 a.m. Not with a moving truck this time. With certainty. My father believes in escalation through presence. If something doesn't yield, you show up larger. My phone buzzed before I even reached the balcony. Gate attempt logged. Visitor access denied. They hadn't requested clearance. They had simply arrived. Again. This time, there were no movers. Just my parents' SUV and my sister in the back seat. I watched from above as they spoke to the officer at the checkpoint. My father's posture was different today. Less confusion. More authority. He pointed toward the building again. But this time he wasn't gesturing like someone asking. He was gesturing like someone correcting an error. I already knew what he was saying. There's been a misunderstanding. He believes most systems can be reasoned with. That if you speak confidently enough, procedure becomes flexible. My phone rang. Residential security. I answered. The previously logged individuals have returned and are requesting supervisor review. How would you like to proceed? The phrasing was careful. Because now it was no longer a simple denial. Now it was a repeat attempt. Escalation threshold approaching. Deny access, I said calmly, and document the second attempt. Understood. No theatrics. No raised voices. Just confirmation. From my balcony, I saw a second officer join the first. A supervisor. Not aggressive. Just present. My sister stepped out of the vehicle. That was new. She walked toward the gate on her own, phone in hand, recording. Optics. If this became a story, she wanted evidence. My father was speaking more sharply now. Even from a distance, I could see the shift in his jaw. He wasn't used to being told no twice. My phone buzzed again. This time, my father. I answered. Put them on, he said immediately. I'm already on the line with them. Tell them to open the gate. I can't. You won't. I can't. There was a pause. Then he tried a different tactic. We'll wait. For what? For someone above them. I looked back down at the checkpoint. The supervisor was holding a tablet now, reviewing something. Likely the log. 2 attempts. Same individuals. No authorization. My father lowered his voice. You're making this permanent. It already is. You think your clearance protects you from consequences. It requires me to follow them. Silence. Then my mother's voice in the background, strained now. Lily, please. This is humiliating. That word again. Humiliation. But this time, it wasn't happening at a dinner table. It was happening at a controlled gate with documentation. You were informed, I said gently. We are your parents. Yes. And this is how you treat us. This is how the system treats unauthorized access. He exhaled sharply. You've chosen your job over your family. No, I replied. I chose my responsibilities. Down below, the supervisor handed something back through the driver's side window. A printed notice. I knew what it was before I received the copy. Formal advisory. Repeated unauthorized access attempt. Not criminal. Not dramatic. But official. If they returned again, it would no longer be classified as misunderstanding. It would be classified as non-compliant entry attempt. My phone vibrated with a secure notification. I didn't open it yet. My sister was arguing now. Not loudly, but insistently. She kept pointing up. Toward my building. Toward my balcony. Toward me. I stepped back into the apartment so she wouldn't see. My father's voice returned to the phone. Quieter now. This affects your record too. No, I said evenly. It affects yours. Another silence. He hadn't considered that. Because authority, in his mind, flows downward. From parent to child. From older to younger. From louder to quieter. But here, authority was procedural. And procedure had already chosen its side. The SUV reversed slowly. Again. Not chased. Not forced. Escorted to the outer road. This time, they didn't linger. At 10:18 a.m., I opened the secure notification. Access status update. Listed individuals temporarily restricted pending resident review. Further attempts will trigger automatic compliance referral. Automatic, meaning I would no longer be contacted first, meaning the system would respond before I did. That was the shift. Not emotional. Structural. At 11:02 a.m., my aunt called again. They said security threatened them. They were informed. You could have stopped this. No. A long pause. Then, more quietly, you're serious? Yes. That was the first moment someone understood. Not that I was angry. Not that I was dramatic. But that I was immovable. At 1:47 p.m., my father sent one final message. We'll make other arrangements. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just retreat. Which, from him, is the closest thing to recognition. I opened the building portal and selected Deny, Ongoing, Confirmed, Saved, Timestamped. The system processed it in less than a second. No fireworks, no confrontation, no speech, just enforcement. They thought this was about bedrooms. It was never about bedrooms. It was about whether my life could be entered without permission. And now, it couldn't. 3 days later, my mother sent a group message. We've signed a lease. Attached was a photo of a modest 2-bedroom apartment across town. Neutral walls. Standard fixtures. No balconies to claim. No commentary. Just proof. My sister didn't respond in the thread. Neither did I. That afternoon, I received a final administrative update from residential security. Status. Individuals remain restricted. No further attempts recorded. Case closed pending resident amendment. Case closed. The language was unemotional. It didn't mention family. It didn't mention humiliation. It didn't mention dinners or expectations. It documented behavior. And consequence. At work, nothing shifted. No reprimand. No warning. No conversation. Because I had done exactly what was required. Followed procedure. Reported nothing unnecessary. Intervened no way inappropriate. Maintained boundary. My clearance remained intact. My housing assignment remained active. My record remained clean. The system had functioned as designed. The following Sunday, my parents hosted dinner in their new apartment. I was invited. I declined. Not dramatically. Just I'm unavailable. My mother replied with a thumbs-up emoji. It was the most neutral response she'd ever given me. A week later, my sister texted privately. You really would have let it escalate. It already had, I replied. Another pause. Then, Dad didn't think they'd document it. I know. She sent one more message. He won't try again. I believed her. Not because he agreed with me, but because he understood the structure now. And my father respects structures once they prove immovable. We haven't discussed it since. No one brings up the gate, or the truck, or the supervisor with the tablet. But something subtle shifted. Requests now come phrased as questions. Visits are scheduled. Tone is measured. There is space where assumption used to be. Not warmth, but clarity. I still live in the same apartment. The same secured building. The same 3 bedrooms. One is my office. One is my guest room. One is mine. None are negotiable. Some evenings, I stand on the balcony and look toward the checkpoint. It's quiet most days. Vehicles approach. Credentials are checked. Access is granted. Or denied. No one argues with the gate. It doesn't debate. It doesn't justify. It simply enforces. I used to think boundaries required explanation. Careful softening. Translation into something easier to accept. They don't. They require consistency. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I didn't shame. I didn't apologize. I allowed the structure to respond. And when it did, I stood behind it. My parents found another apartment. My sister found another room to decorate. And I remained exactly where I was assigned to be. Legally. Professionally. Permanently. Because authority doesn't argue.